Yes, we are in person. This is kind of crazy. I'm freaking out just a little bit. Um, cool. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the relaunch of JakesussmanLive. I know it's been a while. So much has happened. But yes, as you know, I'm here with someone really cool. Now, if you are just joining in for the first time, my name again is Jake Sussman. I'm the founder of Superpower Consulting. I'm a dyslexia and ADHD influencer, entrepreneur, and advocate for your kids. Now, really since COVID started, I have been interviewing all these different people from around the world, all who have struggled at some point with their learning challenge and have overcome adversity and have embraced themselves. And tonight, I have someone really exciting to introduce you to, and we're going to dive into some really cool things. So, Elisheva is a dyslexia researcher, intelligence redefiner, and podcast host. She is the founder of Dyslexia Quest Counseling, which runs the famous Dyslexia Quest podcast, which most of you probably know. She's on a mission to decode the dyslexic mind and empower the dyslexic community to fully understand both the strengths and the difficulties of the processing style. Now, both of her academic background in cognitive science, education, and social work, as well as her own personal experiences with dyslexia, allows Elisheva to draw on a unique blend of both the personal and scientific. Wow, that's pretty awesome. And tonight, if you're joining us here, please just let us know where you're watching from. I mean, there's nothing cooler than community, and our world is a big place, but we're fighting for something all so similar. So if you can just share where you're watching from, that would be so great, because our community is much smaller than you realize. Okay, so it's August. And you know as parents what that means. August is back to school month. And I'm not going back to school, but I'm freaking out, right? So I think I can only imagine what it must be for some of these kids who have been in quarantine for a year, and they just come out of a summer and now coming back to school, and our parents who are watching this are, we have to, we're thinking about ways that we can, take this school year and make it best. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jake.
Welcome. I know. I am very excited for this. Tell me, about your. Let's go back to the beginning a little bit. How did you get involved in this whole thing?
Yes, sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say welcome, everybody. We've got my Instagram at the Dyslexia Quest going on live over here to the left. We have Jake's Facebook Live going on to the right. So if our eyes are going a little bit from side to side, you'll know why, because we've got the cameras from both angles. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be invited onto your show. Just about 2 so anybody that's interested in having the interview tables reversed, you can go ahead and search that podcast episode on the Dyslexia Quest podcast. Jake's right there. So how did I get into all of this? What's my origin story? I have to figure out where I'm looking, because I've got a phone here, a computer here, and Jake's here.
Yeah,
so we need.
We'll just kind of talk, and we'll look over. You know what? This is gonna be. It's fine. We're
okay,
good. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a bit about my origin story. So I have pretty much a traditional story where from the time that I started going to school, I was having difficulties with traditional academic subjects. By the time I was in third grade, I hit kind of the classical dyslexic wall that everybody talks about, that up until third grade, you're learning to read, but third grade onward, you're reading to learn. And that's where the students that don't have that same fluency really begin having major issues. It's also fascinating because right now I'm a mom of a son that's going into third grade that has a very I struggled academically before third grade, but third grade was the first time where things seemed like they were really becoming a big issue. and I went for traditional assessments, and my parents were told that I had some kind of like general learning disability. I don't remember that diagnosis really gave my parents a lot of insight, or the people working with me, how to work with me. But I went on to be put in various different special ed classrooms and resource rooms, and let me just make sure this is still going. Various different resource rooms, and then quickly my academic issues began manifesting with behavioral issues. And I really didn't want to be in school. I started having stomach aches and headaches every single day. I remember once hearing in like 3rd or 4th grade that somebody had the record of how many late days or absences they came to the school, and I remember putting my little determined mind to beat that average. And I think I set a new school record with ditching class, going to the nurse's office, or not showing up at all. By the time I was in 5th grade, I was getting detention. And then ultimately, by the time I got to high school, I dropped out of school for half a year because my body just completely shut down and I couldn't face another day. But fast forward a little bit, I went on to study cognitive science in undergrad because I was really interested in learning and my own experiences, and I wanted to understand why it was that I felt like I had so many strengths but also so many differences, and I wanted to try to understand my own experiences. And then in the classes that I was taking, I really didn't feel like I was represented in the material. I didn't my own research, and researching the individual differences in learning and the strengths of the dyslexic processing style, which became a blog. Eventually the blog became a podcast. Then I went to social work school with a specialty on psychotherapy and counseling, and that kind of brings me to the work that I'm doing now.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's in your story, and for our parents and for our education, for our folks watching. I don't know about you, but in Elisheva's share, did you hear your own kids in her share? Because I heard myself in your share. I know, so your son's entering 3rd grade. My journey started in 3rd grade, where I was kicked out of class all the time. I would feel like throwing up whenever I would pick up a book. Actually, on the floor, nauseous. No one would figure it out. So what would happen? I would just be thrown out of class. I was the behavioral problem in 3rd grade all the way up into 6th grade when my parents pulled me out. And this is a real thing. It's a real thing. And now I'm curious though, for you as a mom now, looking back, and your son's about to start in that year that for us was where it began. What's that like for you? Are you nervous?
It's really, I mean, it's been a fascinating experience. I have 2 children. My second son processes information very differently than me. He's totally his own person. My first son is also his own person, but we really see the world very similarly. We really process things very similarly. And so it's fascinating to also be able to see that some of those strengths that I later went on to really cultivate and develop, and that ultimately supported me, or coping mechanisms or adaptive mechanisms, and helped me navigate a world that was very challenging and wasn't really built for me, was really there from the very beginning if I was looking for it. So after all the research that I did on dyslexia and really understanding what does it mean to have my processing style, what does it mean to look at it from a holistic perspective where you see both strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
and you also see how the weaknesses are related to the strengths and the strengths are related to the weaknesses, that they're 2 sides of the same neurological coin, if you will. To go back and to see my eldest son from the time he was really 2 years old, how he interacted with information, how imaginative he was, the kind of questions he had, the creativity he had, and be able to notice that right from the beginning, I think was also very rewarding. I think, it's fascinating. The shoemaker's children never have shoes, so I don't know exactly where that takes us. But it's been it's been a fascinating journey. But what I would also find equally as informative, my experience as being a parent, is my experience of being a clinician. and the work that I do with people. And a big part of the work that I do with people when we're navigating academic trauma, we're navigating the stories that we create about who we are in the world through academic experiences, is through mind, body, psychosomatic methods where I help people go back into those earlier memories and go back into those earlier feelings. And we explore them. And so it will show up like somebody would share something that's going on in the here and now. So they would share something like an experience that they're having at work, or they'll share an experience that they're having in their family system or with their friends that made them feel a certain way, whether it made them feel inadequate or it made them feel like they weren't feeling fully seen or they weren't fully recognized. And I'll have people reflect on where's the earliest time that they can remember feeling that feeling. And you guys can all begin playing with this tool in your own lives, is actually have people relax and close their eyes and see what comes up automatically. And very often I'm brought into the third grade classroom, or from second to fourth grade. That's almost where the beginning of so many of these stories start. And I've heard so many people share these experiences of beginning to form this sense of self. And that's been really informative also, because I often ask my clients, what would have the medicine been for you, right? Go back and hold your younger self, hold your third grade self, hold your second grade self, hold your fourth grade self. What did that person need, right? What did that younger Jake need? What did that younger Elisheva need? And we do this in kind of like with closed eyes and more of a meditative stance, so people can really get in touch with those parts of themselves.
Can we do that now?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Let's do it.
Okay, well, if you're driving watching this, I don't know why you'd be watching this in the first place, but I want to try this. And if you're watching this, let's do this together.
Yeah.
Because you're right. When you go back to that moment, because you're born on a blank. I believe people are born with a blank slate. I believe that you're born, the experiences around you shape a lot about who you are, and your opinions and your experiences and your insecurities and all that. So I strongly believe that if we take a minute and reflect back to that moment when life was great, when things were going all right, what was that turning point?
Yeah.
And maybe for parents, it's, I talk to a lot of parents, and for those of you who don't know me, I run a mentoring program for kids with dyslexia and ADHD, and over the 90 kids that we work with that see themselves and their kids, but see that time of their life when things weren't going well. And it ends up coming out in their parenting style, but in a toxic way.
Oh, totally, and that's a huge thing that I talk about in my courses,
Yeah.
is how parents can, let's see if this live is still going, it's reconnecting, how parents can kind of understand the difference between their own experiences and their children. And
Okay.
that's, very fertile ground to talk about with communities.
I'm in.
There. Yeah.
I'm in.
So what did you want to try?
I want to close my eyes and I want to go back to that. I want to go back to that.
Would you like me to be your therapist?
Can you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So a major philosophical premise that's impacting me, because it will show up within the past month. You'll have some experience where there will be a strong emotional charge. And so the easiest way we can really find out the impact of some of these childhood experiences, and then we can broaden them to what it means as parents, is to kind of reflect on, was there an experience in the domain of business? It almost often comes up because you're dealing with competency, right? Like how capable you are, where you can remember feeling triggered, unseen, insecure, ashamed, not recognized, not celebrated, where you feel like you have to prove, or
Right. Wow. It's true, because I've gone through. There's a lot of times in our life we go through things, and they're trends to our behaviors.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're talking about this now, just so that we can back to school. We're talking about a blank slate, an opportunity for our kids to start something new, start new habits, start, not just our kids, but even for you as parents. But the only way to do that, in order for our kids to have confidence, to have a high self-esteem, we have to kind of go back. You got to go back. In order to build a house, you have to go down to dig the foundation in order to build the house, but you never see the foundation, but we have to go down.
Yeah,
so,
and I'll even add
Yeah.
something to that. With the parents that I work with that have children that are struggling in the traditional school system, they themselves, the parents, are very good students. Sometimes it can feel really disorienting because it can be like all my experiences of elementary school were like positive experiences and where that was like a safe, happy, fun place where I saw my friends, and it's really hard for me to relate to what my child is going through. And then as we begin doing this work, what often emerges is that the kind of things that your kids need from you in terms of a certain like emotional presence and in terms of often being seen, being witnessed, being understood is often similar to things that parents need maybe in a different area of your life. So maybe school for you was easy, but there was another place where you felt like your needs were not met. And there was another place. And when as parents we come into contact with those experiences, it often gives us a lot of wisdom of what's actually helpful, right? What would we have wanted from our care providers?
Right, and I would encourage you, look, I know you all probably don't know each other that are watching this, but we are a community, and I guarantee, there is going to be someone, there is going to be, that was my phone, there is going to be someone else watching this are they feeling as we're gearing up to this coming school year? Because that's why we're here. That's what we're here for you. So anyway, I just wanted to just let
Absolutely. Like at any point in this live, you can share as mom or dad or caretaker how you're feeling right now gearing up for the school, and if your children have said anything or shared any thoughts or feelings how they're feeling gearing up for school. So you can put that in the comments, both on my Instagram or over here on the live, and we'd love to hear about that.
Cool. All right. So I do want to give this a shot. If that's cool.
Yeah.
And then I have a bunch more questions for you, but I think this is going to be good. And for you watching, I do encourage you to close your eyes also. Follow Elisheva here, because this is going to allow you to get into that part of you where you'll be able to now understand maybe your kids a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So try to
I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, so try to think in the past. Or anything that felt like there was a strong emotional charge around it.
Yes.
You got something?
Yes.
Is it something you can share with us? Or do you want to get something else?
Well, I will say that I've been doing a lot of reflecting on my habits and why I gravitate towards certain things. And the clarity that I got, does it have to be a bad emotion or a good emotion?
And you need to talk about an experience where you had a strong emotional experience. So not like I've been reflecting, because that's a cognitive experience. That doesn't tell me about what was going on in your body with those beneath your neck.
Okay.
So like, what had you reflect? Like, was there an experience that you had or a feeling that you had that you brought on reflection?
Well, I would say that my experience was the fear of failure.
Can you be specific? Like,
Yeah.
what happened?
So I'm running an organization, and when you don't feel, when you are working hard, sometimes it's easy to forget why. And so you don't want your passion to become an outlet that is not becoming it's not the thing
Right.
like you don't want it to become an escape.
Right.
So my big breakthrough I had.
No, you didn't tell me about the fear. What happened
Sorry.
when you felt fear? Sorry.
It's okay. This is good.
It's not the easiest thing
No,
to do.
it's
not the
okay.
easiest
That's
thing to
no,
do.
no, it's good. Okay, so the fear that I felt was
Love
yeah
it.
because my heart is for helping kids, and I want to make sure that I can provide that because I know that I can connect to them. So I couldn't sleep one night because I was just like, there's so much to do, and I'm only one person. So that was my big emotional breakthrough of like, that was my fear. That was my
Okay.
fear.
So like it's like overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed.
Fear, like afraid and overwhelmed.
And
Right.
overwhelmed.
Okay. So what I would have you do is try to like close your eyes.
Okay.
And
You
just
see that I'm sweating right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can take off your jacket.
Okay, we're good.
Just try to bring up that experience, and I don't know if you'll be able to do it now with the lives, but being in a room, being in your bed, and try to see if you can find the feeling that was there. Try to see if you can pull up the feeling.
I got it.
You got it? And then just quickly notice like where it shows up in your body. Like, do you feel it in your neck, the
I
chest?
feel it right here.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so just notice it. Bring your attention back to that part of your body, your chest. Okay. And now just ask yourself, and it doesn't need to be accurate or true, it might not be true, but just see what happens. When's my earliest memory of remember feeling this exact flavor of feeling? And you see what shows up. And when you've got something, just pick up your pen. Okay. And now just bring to mind a little bit where you were at that age. Just
So, you want me to share?
not yet. Yeah, just notice what was going on for him. And then pay close attention to him, come close to him. Maybe there's some physical touch, see if he wants it, hands on his back, or something like that. See if he wants some affection, just come close to him.
Yep.
Yeah. And just see what does he need. What does he really need? And just be with him. See what shows up. And you can stay here for however long you need. Like, ready to share.
Wow. Immediately, I went back to 6th grade. And I was in reading class. It was the first semester of middle school. And I was called on to read out loud. And at that point, I was 3 grade levels behind in reading. And my teacher called me out in front of 30 kids. And I started to read, kind of, not at all. I would try to sound out the words. And then all of a sudden, I heard laughing behind me. And that feeling of aloneness, because no one came to save me. My teacher was there, the helper was there. No one stopped it, and no one came to save me. And I have recently come to terms with, but that younger Jake, who was alone, being laughed at because he couldn't read, made to feel stupid, was the Jake that is coming to mind. The same Jake that was told that same semester by his guidance counselor that I would never go to college.
Yeah.
So that is what I say.
To just talk a little bit more to like what would have made the difference for him? What would have really made the difference for you? Even after the last night happened? Or while
Someone that actually, that I'm the oldest in my family, and I wish I had someone that got me, that understood me, that wasn't like a therapist or someone professional, but just like a cool person that understood me,
Yeah.
that got me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really happy that you brought this up, and I'm really happy we did this exercise, because what I hear time and time again in my sessions with clients is when people do this exercise, is underneath it all, like the biggest wound and the biggest craving and the biggest longing is some kind of being seen, being witnessed, or being understood.
Right.
That comes up time and time again. And I think that it's really important to talk to parents about this, because as we're coming back to school, there can be such a temptation to, like, get the tutors and get the programs and get the workbooks and get the CDs or whatever is in vogue right now, and get all the stuff and the school supplies and the consumerism, and all of that is really important, and all the techniques and all the strategies and all the stuff that you're going to put on top is really important. But so often, like, what we need to make sure is an essential ingredient that's there is we need to also just make sure before we rush to like purchase a solution or purchase tutoring or purchase services or whatever it is, that our children are feeling seen and received. Like, those things are extremely powerful, and it was almost nobody that has ever come to my couch that has said, the thing that would have made all the difference for me is, an extra workbook, or, an extra few hours, do with some kind of whatever tutoring. And every single person has said what would make, not every single person, but time and time again, people have said what would make the difference if I would have been seen, if I would have been heard, if I would have been understood. And I think that can be a really powerful message to parents. It's not to say to not do all the other things. Do all those things 100%, but just to first check, like, in which way are you really showing up to hear your child, to receive your child, to understand your child, for your child not to feel like they're alone.
Wow. I think we're so quick to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Growing up with the learning difference, I thought that I was broken. I thought that I was stupid. I thought that I was there was something seriously wrong with me, when in reality it's so far from the case. Now, first of all, that experience was surreal. I was right there in the classroom with younger Jake. And for our parents watching this, I really encourage you to try this activity with yourself. It's hard. It's not easy. But if you can bond with that,
If a feeling is feeling active for you, you can always ask yourself, how early is my earliest memory that I can remember feeling this feeling? And it would often, tell a very powerful story.
great. That's really, really great. And what would you say are some like tips for parents as we're gearing up to school? Like, how could parents better motivate their kids and have them feel ready when we have kids who are really scared to go back to school?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would say with the work that I do with parents is that there's always a co-created experience with the child's experience, which are very real experiences that are not a direct result of the parents in any way. The child has their own processing style. They have, their own experiences with school, with teachers. They have their own memories, but it's a co-created experience with the parent's nervous system. Steps. But I would just fundamentally like to encourage parents to really take a look at the ways that they're co-creating an experience that isn't supporting their children. And one of those ways is if parents are adding to fear that children are already feeling. And the way that shows up is when parents have belief that, and often it's like kind of like a little like sneaky, almost like shameful belief, like they wish it wasn't there, but they're just they're worried about how their child will fare as an adult, right? They're worried about how their child will fare in the next developmental stage that they're in. They're worried about how their child might fare in the competitive job marketplace, or in college, or in university. So doing the hard work of detangling what's a really important parental impulse, right? Where is that coming from a place of really important parental wisdom that's helpful to the situation and that's keeping you alert and attentive and motivated to find solutions? And where is it like unnecessary fear that you're projecting into the family system and perhaps projecting into the child that's keeping the child operating in a certain in a certain framework that has fear in it? So for instance, very often I'll see, a child is okay with having messy handwriting, or picking up reading at a different rate, and I'm not saying it's always like that. Very often the children, they themselves are upset or agitated or noticing the people to the left or the right, but it often happens as and parents sometimes, they themselves have a strong attachment that things are different, that things should be different. I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but I am saying that's often helpful to begin exploring this attachment, right? Why are you so attached to this idea that your child should have good handwriting, right? Like, why is that even important? And there's, if I can use this opportunity as a time for parents to maybe just do a little bit check-in right now with themselves. So, like, what are the fears that are present about with your child coming into school? And are there any fears that maybe you don't want to continue carrying with you? Maybe there's like, you're waiting for an opportunity for permission slip to say you don't need to worry about this, or that your fear might actually not be helping things, it might be harming things.
I think that's so great. Wow,
Yeah.
That's so awesome. That's great. And if you are watching this with questions, please don't hesitate to ask. This is an opportunity to, again, like, we're getting vulnerable. We're talking about the real things. Like, something that Elisheva and I really strive to do is we have a lot of experience, but the best credibility is from our personal experiences that we lived in. We know what your kids are thinking. We know what they're feeling. We know what they're going through, really. And this is just an incredible opportunity to ask those real questions to people who have gone through it. And I admire your work in your dedication to helping not just the next generation, but the parents who are parenting the next generation, because it's going to be up to us to really change the game.
Yeah.
So let's have some fun for a sec. So, like, where do you see this space going? Like, what are it's so easy to talk about the bad things that are happening and like the struggling, the this, that, but like, where are we going right now? Like where do you see this?
Oh, it's so exciting. I mean, when I was growing up, there was no internet conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was no internet conversation about individual differences in learning. I got my diagnosis, which should have been dyslexia, but it was just a generalized learning disability. My parents didn't have really anywhere to go to really understand what that meant in a holistic way. And when I got into this field, right after my 8-year-old is how there was an entire field of people talking about individual differences in learning, and most of that conversation happened from tutors and teachers and professionals. And all of a sudden, with the internet, and all of a sudden with communities, just like Jake's and just like mine, where parents had a voice, the conversation started to drastically change. So all of a sudden, it went from an industry conversation to almost like a family conversation. And when parents and individuals start to talk about their own children, not from the context of just school, but from understanding their children from a 360 perspective, from seeing their children holistically, from seeing what their children were like in the summer and who their children were, before they got to 3rd grade, all of a sudden in the field, the vocabulary, the language, the framing of the entire conversation shifted drastically. It went from a completely pathology-based conversation of, these are the issues and this is how we bill it insurance-wise, and to a conversation that was much more about how do we understand these individuals, how do we not whitewash these difficulties that might be very real difficulties, but how do we see the difficulties within the context of a holistic system, and how can we represent these individuals more holistically, both their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's been really exciting to see how kind of the grassroots movement has changed the conversation.
Yeah. I think for the first time in a long time, our kids have a shot to not being alone. That is, I think, what's going on right here.
Oh, yeah.
They have a shot to not be alone. And our parents have a shot to not be alone. That's why social media is great. We could talk all badly about it, but it brings us together. Those who go through adversity have an opportunity to come back and give back. So I really see that that's what's happening in our space. It's really, really exciting. And I guess my final question to you is, first of all, do you have anything else that you'd like to just talk about that we haven't really touched upon? We covered a lot.
We covered a lot. I would say there's one thing at the tip of my tongue, which is one more parenting thing for children that are struggling in traditional school settings. And both Jake and I had a similar story where we were really struggling in our academic environment, and it started showing up as behavioral issues. Jake talked about getting kicked out of class. I have very vivid memories of being in 3rd grade. I felt like a tiny little person in a huge school getting kicked out into the hallways and sitting in the hallways and just being completely terrified. I didn't really understand why I was getting kicked out of class, but things seemed to be metabolized by the adults around me as behavioral issues. And so I feel very strongly to just remind parents and teachers and tutors that all behavior is communication, and that all children, even the children that are really making a lot of issues, want to please. And there's a reason why they're not pleasing, and that's because something else is even more important than pleasing, which is, communicating something, protesting something, sharing that a need isn't working. If they could just please the adults around them, they would. But there's something more urgent that is trying to be communicated through the behavior. And so for any parents that have children that are really acting up in class, to really ask, try to get curious about what is my child trying to communicate with this behavior, and why does it make more sense for them to pick this behavior over just pleasing adults, because that is an uncomfortable response.
Yeah.
Trouble is always going to be an uncomfortable response for the kids, so if they're doing it, that has to have a big payoff for them. So what is the payoff? What are they getting out of it?
Can I add to that?
Yes.
Okay, so when it comes to discipline, I just want to quickly touch upon this, because the worst thing to do is take away a kid's outlet. All right, this is an activity that they allow themselves, that they gravitate toward, whether it's video games, to being outside, to recess, to whatever that is. We don't want to punish our kids and remove that outlet away from them, because that's what they need to feel grounded. Something that I always share with parents when it comes to,
either disciplining or when it comes to just to parenting in a way that will help educate our kids if they make a mistake, is to teach them the value of the impact, right? What is the impact of your actions? How does the impact, when someone just says, I'm sorry, look, I would forget to do the dishes, and sometimes when I go back to my house, I'll still forget to do the dishes, and we're so quick to say, I'm sorry. That word honestly means nothing. So what if we can teach our kids, instead of saying, I'm sorry, it's, what's the impact that your actions had on the other person? Because if you say, I'm sorry, it's about you. It's about me. I'm sorry. I don't care about you. I'm the one who's sorry, because then you won't be mad at me. But what if I said, you know what, I recognize when I didn't do the dishes, that must have caused more chaos in the house. Yeah. Right? To recognize that my actions have an impact on other people, on others in the house, I think that's really powerful, because it takes away from just the, oh, I'm sorry, then we'll move on and make the same mistake again next week. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my little.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think that's.
I think you wrung me dry.
I'm dry also. That's I think that's
think
a wrap.
we did good.
But I do want to know.
Yes.
All right, because I ask this question all the time, and everyone has different stories. I think I asked you this question when I brought you on last time, but I believe that dyslexia and ADHD is a superpower. Like, I believe having a learning disability is a superpower. Okay. Yeah. And it, not from the sense of like, oh, like we're these superhumans that have these super strengths and like it was easy for us, because it's not.
Yeah.
What is your superpower? And why you think, I just want to quickly explain why, because it's very controversial, this idea of superpowers.
Yeah, I know.
To my perspective, I run a company called Superpower Consulting, so I better have a good explanation for superpowers, all right?
Exactly.
Superman, Clark Kent, my favorite superhero. First of all, superhero movies are the only genre where an adult and child can watch it and get something different out of it at the same time. It's incredible. Okay, so the question is, why superheroes? Why are we so attracted to the superhero journey?
Yeah, the hero's journey.
Why are we so attracted to that? So for me, I love Superman. Okay, and Superman is not Superman. He's just Clark Kent. He's Clark Kent. He was a misunderstood boy. He was bullied. He was isolated. He was different. He didn't fit in. That's Clark Kent. At some point in Clark's journey, when he was so isolated, he had to go down this journey by himself, alone, and that's our journey. We had to go through it alone.
Yeah, it's the classic hero's journey.
Right, and then at that point in Superman, and if you haven't seen Superman, I'm about to spoil it, so like turn it off right now, okay? When he was in the cave, talking to the ghost of his father, when he was rejecting his superpower, that moment when Clark Kent finally, he like put the cape on, was the moment when Clark Kent embraced himself. And that's when Clark Kent became Superman. So for our kids, right? So for us, it wasn't easy for us, right? We're just Clark Kents, like we're the Peter Parkers. No one knows Peter Parker. They know Spider-Man. They know Superman. We are becoming that, and the only way to do that is to embrace yourself and your ability, because everyone learns differently.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what's your superpower?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. My superpower, I would say that.
Dun-dun-dun.
I would say my superpower is that I'm very self-reflective and growth-oriented, and
Nice.
I know exactly where it came from. It came from being in the hallway as thank you, wondering why I'm kicked out of class. And I can remember I switched schools after 5th grade. I switched to a different school, and just like the amount of just ambition I had to figure out the world. I didn't do that well in school in the second place, but I had this promise to myself where like I'm going to try to pull myself up from my bootstraps, and what that took was a real like noticing of what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
And I think I cultivated that. I think it took me, it might have taken a while to fully figure that out, but the desire to be curious about what's working and what's not working, I think, is really my superpower.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And now I help people notice their own lives. So it comes in circle.
Sign me up. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, where can people sign up for what? How can people get involved in your whole situation?
In the Dyslexia Quest stuff. So people that are longtime fans might realize that it's a little bit. I've been taking a little bit of a backseat because I'm deep in clinical training. To be the best psychotherapist that I can be.
In the entire world.
In the entire world. But as for now, there's a self-paced how to build your child's self-esteem regardless of the school environment course that you can get link in bio on my Instagram at the Dyslexia Quest. So everybody can follow at the Dyslexia Quest, and you should be able to see that course up link in bio. The website is under construction at the moment, so it's not live. But you can find that course. It's an 8-week course. You can take it at your own pace, and the information is available for you for however long you need it. So it's completely self-paced, and it's a very, very powerful journey. So if any of the parents that have been listening to this are curious about some of these behavioral things, they're curious about how they can understand how they co-participate in their child's experience, they're curious about how they can feel like they can give their children tips and tricks and resiliency skills to rise to the occasion regardless of what they're up against, it's the course for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, what's my
now,
plug?
Now your plug.
What's my plug? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So if you have kids anywhere between the ages of 7 to 23 years old, we can connect them to a mentor that also has dyslexia or a learning difference anywhere in the world. All you have to do is just reach out to me or visit our website, which is live, although it's being worked on, superpowerconsulting.com, or you can follow me at JakesussmanLive, where I post videos and interviews now, moving forward throughout the whole rest of the year, all about the perspective of your kids, and that's where we come from. So if you would like to sign your kids up for our mentoring program, out of the 90 families we've worked with, the number one feedback we get is that their kids have gotten more out of their mentor than most professionals that they've worked with, simply because that we've been there. And I think that's something that we both have in common with our expertise and what we bring to the table, is that emotionally we know exactly what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think